Right, quite a few people are still struggling with a few shortcuts. I thought I made this video to give you a couple of tips on some shortcuts and building hacks. For most commands, you need to do /op self, and then you have access to quite a few things. For example, by pressing O, you can then switch from creative to adventure mode and from adventure mode to creative mode in a single button press. Nice. If you think flying in creative is a little bit too slow, then you can simply press F2 to increase the speed multiplier. This goes all the way until 15. If you then also press shift to sprint, well, that gets quite fast. In the other way, you can also press F1 to decrease the speed all the way to, yep, indeed, 0. And then you won't move at all. Oh my. Some people want a Freecam mod. Well, you don't even need it. Press F4 and you're now inside of Freecam. And what you can see is you can even zoom about. This also applies the speed effect, by the way, so I can also move very slowly. And if I now press F5, well, all of a sudden I have character control again, so I can just do all sorts of cool things right here. Then pressing F8, I can also disable the entire UI and HUD elements, so, well, now I can just sort of fly around and, hello there, what are you doing here? Although I will say controlling the character while you're inside of the Freecam is, well, obviously you'll need to get used to that. Additionally, it seems that you can't really build right here as the camera is, well, at a different spot. So do keep that in mind as well. When you go into the menu, when you're in creative mode, you have a huge selection of quick settings. For example, the no clip over here, which right now is on. That means I can just quick clip through the world. And if I press F3, I can also disable that and enable that as well. So that's a really nice toggle. The flight mode can also be changed. Right now we're hovering. If I were to put on directional, now all of a sudden I can actually look into a direction and I'm also going to fly in that direction immediately, which for some of you might actually be preferred. There's also flight inertia, so how much am I basically going to, well, continue to move? So you can see now I actually have quite a bit of inertia, so if I were to, move quite fast and then stop moving, I just continue to go for quite a while. That's actually also a pretty cool thing. The default is 40, which I actually think is totally fine. It's a very, very subtle effect, so I think that's okay. Move spin can also be adjusted right here. That's also totally fine. And if you've ever seen that NPCs basically don't actually detect or respond to you when you hit them in creative mode, well, would you look at that? I have a whole bunch of wolves and they don't care that I'm hitting them. However, I can say allow detection and all of a sudden, well, there they are and respond to hit. Well, now they will attack me. Now, to be fair, it doesn't do anything because I'm in creative mode, so no damage taken here. Nice. Another insanely useful option is the air placement. Now this one is goated. So if you turn this on, you will see a ghost block right here. And basically you can now use the scroll wheel to, well, push it away from you or get it more towards you. And the idea is that you can simply place it inside of the air. So this is really cool. Do note that obviously because you're using the scroll wheel, you can't scroll anymore on the hotbar. So you either need to use the keys or simply quickly disable the air placement and then you can scroll again normally. But for just placing 1 or 2 blocks inside of the air, that is really freaking cool. Of course, there's quite a few other ones like the tool reach settings and the minimum delay. So if you take out any tool, like for example, the ruler right here, well, this has a reach of 128 right now. However, I could theoretically push this up to 500 and all of a sudden, look at this, I can theoretically go all the way to here, all the way to here. And now I know that this is, well, 199 blocks. Nice. I've shown you the F8 button, which disables the HUD. However, you can also manually choose what things to disable and enable. So maybe when you have the HUD enabled, you only want to remove the hotbar. Well, you can do so. Now everything else is still showing up and you basically have the ability to completely customize the UI visibility. One feature that I was baffled by that people don't know is that in the quick settings menu, all the way to the bottom over here, you can turn on full bright mode, which basically gives you night vision inside of creative, which basically also, if I were to go down, works flawlessly right here. So you can see the difference. This is how you would, well, have it with night vision full bright on. And if you were to turn it off, well, then it will look kind of like this, obviously quite a bit darker. The ruler sometimes is a little bit weird, so what you can do is you can simply right-click on a block, and now I can basically rule and, well, measure how long this is. I then want to right-click again, and then left-click, and then the first measurement over here is going to stay like that. To once again select this, I basically just hover over it and now press the left mouse button, and then I can continue from here, or if I press the left mouse button again, I basically go outside of the selection. If I wanted to move this about, I'd right click over here and now I can move the same selection again, and once again, simply right click, and that also measures it. Hovering over this and pressing Q deletes this particular block right here. Measuring from this point again is now possible if I left click on this and then bada bing bada boom, and there we go. And now theoretically I've measured it again. If I want to delete the entire line, I simply select it, press R, and then all of the points get deleted. If you've been building your dream house and you have a whole bunch of things in your inventory, what you can do is simply hover over the blocks and press delete, and it will delete the entire stack right here. That is usually more efficient and much faster than, well, dragging them into the creative menu like I might have done previously. Oh well. If you open the creative tools and then go to Machinima, then a camera will be given to you. To actually start using Machinima is more straightforward than you might think. It just is a little counterintuitive. You first want to make a new scene. So let's say cool tutorial scene right here. Then we will hit create scene, and then we need to add another track. So in this little plus button, we want to make a new camera. We can, for example, call this the main camera right here, and then create that as an actor. And then very importantly, we want to select this track by clicking on this. You can see that a first frame has already been added. So if I go, if I move it a little bit, you can see that the camera right here is already existing. If you do not see this, press the I button to bring up the overlay right here. So if you want to use this, you can left mouse button click once on this and then can move the camera. If you wanted to view from inside the camera, you press the C button and can now see what the camera sees. Pressing C again while having the camera instead of your hotbar is going to change the view. If I then were to place myself down anywhere, let's say, for example, right here, and press the X button, that is going to add a new camera 30 frames after the previous frame. And now here, it gets really cool. Because we have this particular camera selected, at the top left corner, we can now see a line and saying frame 30, very, very small. I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see that we're now on frame 30. If I now use the arrow keys, so I use arrow key left, I'm actually going to basically scrape through the timeline. So you can see I'm increasing and decreasing the arrow. If I hold Alt, that's going to be half the speed. If I press Shift and do that, that's going to be double the speed. If I then switch to the camera and I press P, then it's going to play that particular part and reset back to the beginning. If I don't like this particular point, I can click on it and press delete, and then it's going to delete that particular point. At the top left corner, we can see that I'm right now at frame 38. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Shift and right arrow to basically continue to increase the frames. And if I were to now press X, well, now the camera position has been set on a completely different frame. And we can see now it would be much, much slower. So if I were to reset by pressing R, we can then go into the camera, press P to play, and you can see it moves much, much slower now, as of course we've increased the number of frames that it uses from one point of the camera to the next. We can press P to pause it once again and press C to get out, and we can even see where the camera currently is. Let's say I increase the frames a little bit more and add a third frame. So let's say, just like right here, we can see exactly the line that the camera is going to take, which is, by the way, absolutely freaking awesome, because obviously I can just click up certain points and I can move the camera. So sometimes I might be clipping through blocks, but I can basically prevent that via that. So finally, we're going to reset the camera. I'm going to go in, and here I'm going to press the F8 button twice. I'm going to press I so that the frames at the top left corner disappear, and then press P, and now our scene is simply playing out. This, of course, shows you whatever is on screen. Currently, I am unaware of if there's a way to then control your character while this scene is playing, or have any sort of mobs do any sort of different animations or anything like that. I have not gotten into that part just yet. This is just the basic camera controls, so you can do some, well, basic scenes in this case. So those are a couple of tips when it comes to the creative mode. Obviously, there's way more to explore over here. I hope this video was useful to you, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos on Hytale. Until next time. So, yeah.